God, war, and sex. Three-letter words.
They flush very nicely.
Justified, literally and figuratively and technically. Would you say that everything you do falls in one of those three categories?
No. No. Then there's eating. And fooling around. I couldn't fit those in.
Yeah, too many words, too many letters.
Yeah, too many letters. Yeah.
There we go. As we go through this work, I wanted to actually talk a little bit about with Seymour about his career and what he's gone through. Do you remember the first drawing you did? Do you remember the first time you realized you could do this?
First time. Well,
you never forget your first time.
Well, the first time was making a drawing of the head of a woman who was having her hair done in a beauty parlor where I was sitting waiting for my mother to have her hair done, and I did it with a mascara pencil. And on some sort of newsprint that I found, and it looked pretty good.
And did other people? Did your mom notice? Did the lady getting her hair done notice?
Oh yeah. Oh, my mother. Oh, well, my mother. Wow.
Was she proud of you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then, did you realize after a certain point that that was something you could do for a living? Did you sort of think? Was there some other kind of career that they had in mind for you?
Well, when I told my parents I wanted to be a commercial artist, that was okay, because, to be a painter, that wouldn't have been so good. But commercial, that's great. Some people make money doing that.
Yeah, good.
And they all thought I would go out to Hollywood and work for Walt Disney.
And did you want to do that as well?
Yeah, until I discovered poster design.
Yeah.
That didn't happen until high school.
There you go. So let's talk about God for a second.
Mm-hmm. Some years ago, a book came out called Is God Dead Here? And I was so upset by that idea that I drew this illustration. This is God is alive and well in Mexico.
And a good shot.
Mm-hmm. Having a good time.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And expelled from the Garden of Eden with a little bit of style, it looks like.
Yeah, being expelled on the last day.
Sequence here.
Yeah, Fra Angelico, I love his frescoes, the ones I had seen in St. Mark's in Florence. Little cells in this monastery where he painted. Usually there was an arch inside that he filled in with a painting, and I had noticed that some subway stations in New York are the same way. So I decided to do Fra Angelico in New York, and that's the way it came out. Hell is a favorite subject of mine. I am becoming somewhat of an expert on hell since my Dante's Divine Comedy came out, and this particular image here is going into a show in Germany next year and one in Madrid. You can ask me anything about hell. But that particular image was done for the New York Times Magazine book review when Steve Heller was
speaking.
Was the art director.
Yeah, I particularly like this image because it puts it in terms that city dwellers can understand perfectly.
Yeah, this is a high-rise hell.
So,
only in this case, you don't start from the top and go down; you go up.
So it gets worse as you go up.
Yeah.
The worse you are, the better the view.
Yeah, the sins, the really terrible sins are near the top. Jaywalkers aren't so terrible. The worst are spammers. And you cause a kitchen fire when that happens.
And the wallpaper just gets worse as you go up and everything. Yeah. And then I know this is a project that's very close to your heart, the illustrated Divine Comedy.
Oh yeah, this is the first graphic novel that I did, and that's the cover, covering hell, purgatory, and paradise, heaven. But they got much more dull and boring, as I was saying. Hell was great,
Yeah.
purgatory was okay, heaven was it was dull.
Yeah, yeah. How long did it take you to work on this?
It took about 6 months. This is I have a couple images after the book. This one was from the book, which was in black and white.
Yeah. And you mentioned Fra Angelico, but a lot of these have a Hieronymus Bosch sort of sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
Filled top to, and a lot of your work does. It's this crowded, top to bottom kind of generosity. You know.
Yeah, well, Bosch knew how great hell was too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sure. And this is when you really get to the middle of the earth. Well, the way Dante figured out that Lucifer was in the middle, and then you turn around and you shoot out very fast there, and you come out in China, and and then proceed to purgatory, which is a mountain.
Yeah. How much of the stuff is research you do, and how much you just make it up out of your own head? And which do you prefer?
Well, I steal when it's appropriate, but not. I have my integrity. If it's not appropriate, I won't steal.
Yeah. As we move into talking about war, I wanted to ask you about, I know you went to, as you entered high school, you got some support and you got some conviction about becoming a designer and illustrator, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, I had a terrific teacher in the public high school in Brooklyn. And I learned about the great poster designers of Europe.
And then you went to Cooper Union and made some friends there that became partners.
Milton Glaser and Ed Sorrell and I were in the same class, and along with Reynolds Ruffins, and we formed first, while we were in school, formed a design firm called Design Plus, a really classy name, and we did 2 jobs. One a flyer for a theatrical piece, and another one we designed placemats that were silk screened and sold to a department store. Then we were out of business.
But then somehow, like a phoenix, you rose from the ashes and...
Yeah, after we graduated, we had a place and we freelanced. And I got a job in the promotion department of the New York Times, which was great. And then after about a year, I wanted to spread my wings. So I took a job in Esquire, and I got fired from that. So I gave up after a couple of years. Along with Ed and Milton, we decided to form a studio. We had been promoting ourselves and trying to do some freelance work. We designed a little brochure called the Pushpin Almanac, and that's how we got the name Pushpin. And then we were in business. We had a paid telephone and a T-square, and that's at those days that's all you needed.
Yeah,
so
no, it's a
have to work.
How old were you at that moment?
Well, let's see. I graduated when I was 19. I guess we were 23 or
20
something.
somethings.
Yeah,
20
20 something.
No, it's amazing when you think about it, because there's at that moment you just were thinking you could get some, if you were lucky, you kind of score some jobs and do some things and make a little money on the side.
Yeah,
and
film strips for teachers, things like that.
You had no idea that you were
$15 a frame.
Really? There you go.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And you, at a moment like that, you have no idea what the future holds for you, right? It sort of is, it could be starvation the next day and or fame, and the latter really is what happened.
Well, I thought my partner, Milton Glaser, think, had his whole life planned out for him. Me, it was just going from paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, and as we all do, even to this day, I would say, right? So,
Yeah.
So it's tough out there.
More so.
And so it brings us to war, and another thing that you're interested in. I think particularly the Hieronymus Boschy sort of epic, titanic struggle of armed conflict actually seems to be an oddly attractive subject for you.
Yeah, there is a connection.
Here we are, yeah.
When I was a kid during World War II, I used to make drawings of air battles and airplanes attacking each other and little bullets, shooting each other down. But I did some paintings. I've also included tanks in some of these large-scale paintings that I had done, along with a few other sort of designy pieces.
Trench warfare.
Yeah. It sort of looks like an office where they just happen to be killing each other. This was an illustration. I could say something about this. I did a book called The Book of Battles, and I did linoleum cuts of different battles in history, and had them hand colored. And I had a small press and bought some type that I said composed myself, and printed the book. This was in the 50s.
And you just change your medium constantly, it seems to me. I mean, linoleum. Yeah, I mean, you have no real standard modus operandi for how you make your drawings, it seems to me.
Well, I love doing cuts, whether wood or linoleum. That's terrific because it has a physical component in carving out stuff, which is sort of, for me, more interesting than doing an etching, which was just a little too delicate.
Someone will ask this question, I'm sure, so I'll beat them to the punch. Do you use computers?
I use computers when the coloring that I'm doing is flat coloring. It's much easier to do it on the computer than on color film, which I used to do, which is much more laborious.
Yeah. Do you do drawings on computers, or you just do?
Oh no.
Yeah.
No, drawings on paper, and my drawings are scanned and colored. Or if I do, I also like to work with colored pencil. Watercolors I can never do because I don't have the nervous system to handle it. Because
what do you mean?
If I make a mistake, if I want to change a color, you can't do it with watercolors. But coloring on the computer is great because you can do everything very fast.
You talk about drawing with mascara, with eyeliner, in your first childhood drawing. Are there? What are some of the other weird things you've drawn with, or media you've used through the years? Well,
I just use mostly a Pilot pencil, which is a little pen. Nothing special.
And not sticks dipped in mud or stuff like that?
No, I've done monoprints, which I love doing. I mean, it's a legitimate print, but you can only make one, and it's by inking up a piece of paper and then drawing on a paper that's on top of that, and you pull it up, and voila, you got either a wonderful print or just a total mess,
And either way,
yeah, something happens.
There's a very well-known poster, and this is a poster that's in museum collections now.
Yeah. This poster I did during the 60s when we were fighting in Vietnam, and it was meant to be our bombing Hanoi in Uncle Sam's Mouth. This was actually produced as a commercial poster. And in those days, posters were collected by everybody, either interested in the anti-war movement or in the music, sometimes drugs as well. But people bought these posters, and they were sold in poster shops. All that is gone.
I've seen pictures of you. I remember now. Would you say you were like a hippie in the '60s? I mean, you have longish hair.
Moi?
Yeah. Yes, sir. You.
No,
were you now, or were you ever?
No, but everybody had long sideburns in those days.
Yeah,
that's about it.
No, one of the fantastic things, if you get into design history, of course, the history books are filled with images like this poster of Seymour's, but every once in a while you'll see a picture of the, say, a conference like this one happening in 1963 or 1973, and in the 60s, you're struck by the fact that everyone's wearing, just straight out of Mad Men, like narrow ties and suits, because you just wouldn't go out in public without that.
We were much more formal in those days.
Yeah. And then you have wide collars and longer hair and medallions and things in the 70s.
Yeah.
I think I've seen one of those accoutrements on you in photographs.
Well, you just reminded me of we had a studio in a loft building on the third floor. And it was a hot summer day. Of course, we didn't have air conditioning. And Milton came to work, and he was wearing bathing trunks and sort of a little tank top here. And a student just out of school came by to be interviewed by Milton here, and he was dressed up all the way. It was very weird because you didn't know who was interviewing whom. He was just with a tie and shirt and his little portfolio that he showed. But Milton was very serious about criticizing the work and encouraging this overdressed student.
That whole thing would probably be illegal today, actually.
Right.
Interviewing someone wearing a bathing suit.
Oh, no,
seemed to be some form of sexual harassment.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is also legendary as well.
That came from a button. I didn't write that slogan. It was again during the Vietnam War. I thought it was worthy of a poster. And again, it was produced by Personality Posters, I think was the name of the firm that produced these things.
And this is a fairly rare example in this show of your typography, but I've always thought you were, your typography was as revolutionary as your drawings were when you were first doing it. Can you talk about how you look at type and how it relates to the way you draw?
Yeah, well, I discovered a Victorian type at school, Cooper Union, where I went through a book called the Phillips Collection, and 19th century type was very decorative because it was tougher to have illustrations. There was no photo engraving. So to make the material interesting, typography was very inventive and very colorful in those days, and with a great variety. And I always loved that stuff. But there was also, it was in the air, magazines. You saw a lot of Victorian type that started to be used. It went into Art Nouveau and Art Deco and sort of moved up.
Yeah, and during this period, this also corresponded with the rise of Helvetica and sort of corporate identity. And it seems like this sort of approach almost is the polar opposite in terms of, instead of being reductive, it's kind of additive. Instead of being pared down, it celebrates decorativeness, so.
Yeah, the New York Times Magazine did an article on Pushpin as representing the new spirit here, sort of freedom, as opposed to the Swiss design, which was Helvetica in those days.
Yeah, and then this was sort of peculiarly American in a way, whereas Helvetica itself was imported, and that whole style was actually, in a way, it
was very rigid.
Bauhaus
there was always a grid, and there was the photograph, and illustration was never used. There was always photography along with type. That was always flush left and rag right.
So have you ever been given an assignment where you thought that was really the right approach and forced yourself to use Helvetica and grids and flush left, rag right, sans serif?
No, I mean, I avoided Helvetica, but that style, but it's sort of a Swiss style, is what I generally used when I design books.
Yeah. I mean, it's the typography you've done in things like Audience magazine, let's say, is sort of very, in a way, classic and functional actually, and has moments of exuberance, but actually very legible too. Again, this is more recent, I believe, right?
Yeah, done during the 80s. No, I guess it's not recent.
Relative speaking. Yeah.
That was the 90s, I think. Like
sort of
yesterday.
sad. It's sort of sad that there's always something to work with on this particular subject.
Yeah. Well, if there was no more war, I'd be out of business,
No, you have other things to fall back on, I think. God and
But
sex.
it was a big chunk taken out of my over. Yeah, this one was, and I was very happy. This was sort of tough because the idea of peace is positive, which is always less interesting than negative.
Yeah, heaven being less interesting to draw than hell.
Yeah,
right?
it's the same thing. But I was, for some reason, I was going through trying to solve this problem and doing this poster, going through a children's book of the first year of the kid's life, and on the last page was him at his first birthday party, and he's wearing a party hat like that, and I think he was holding a ball, and so it almost made it himself here, but I was so happy that the A was in the middle of those letters. I mean, if peace was spelled P-A-E-C-E, I couldn't have done it. You're happy for those things when they come along, and then the design becomes inevitable.
Exactly.
It had to be done. We can move on to sex now.
If you're ready. Yeah, I don't want to rush things. So I mean, you must draw every single day, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And whether you have an assignment or not.
Well, I generate work myself.
Yeah. So is it a compulsion at all? Is it something you sort of have to do? If you couldn't do it, would
Absolutely.
you? Yeah.
Is it the same with you? Yeah. What would you do?
I bet it's the same with most of the people in this room.
Yeah, sure.
It's sort of, I think a lot of what you'll find out at Indaba is that it's, I mean, Paul has sort of made the same point in a way that, creativity is less about this sort of act of kind of waking up and deciding to be creative, and more about just working with what you've got. And sometimes you've got, a compulsion inside you that needs to be driven. Sometimes you just come up against these situations that seem insurmountable. Sometimes the A is right in the middle of a 5-letter word, and it sort of seems to work out perfectly that way.
Right.
But it's always how you make things out of what you find there.
Sure.
Yeah. When I looked at these slides before, I sort of was expecting the first image to be not shoes, actually, but you're starting with what interests you the most, I would say.
What's that? No, I've done a lot of shoes. I've been accused of being a shoe fetishist.
Yeah. Toe cleavage, in abundant evidence there. Yeah.
I had a show in Munich, and I did this drawing, but there's just no connection with my work. I mean, I was trying to figure out what to do. I try to solve problems here. There's no solution to this drawing.
That's the solution.
This is a personal work piece that I used to do paintings on sheet metal and cut them out. My weekend work. So that's one example of that.
I'm normally not that into feet, but I find this picture pretty erotic, actually. It's the heel that's sort of...
You like the heel?
Yeah.
It's the round part.
Yeah, it's a very spankable heel, right. I would say. And getting more to the fun-filled realm of Hieronymus Bosch and lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, but more present day than that. So I did a little publication called The Nose, and each issue I did it twice a year. Each issue was on a theme. Dirty laundry was the theme of this one here, so it's sort of scandal. That's all. But Peridot was an animation house, and I thought it was pretty sexy. This was a drawing actually inspired by Paula, who I was courting at the time here when I did this work, and dedicated to her. But it was an announcement for, I think, photographs. I forget what's on some sort of exhibition.
Yeah. Is she the
called
siren?
My Best Work.
Is she the siren drawing you into the drawing board? Then?
Right.
Lovely.
Monoprint for Evergreen magazine, which doesn't exist anymore. I did a few drawings like this. This actually was done for AIGA, and I forgot why.
This goes all the way back to your youth, though. These are those hairstyles that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you see charts like this in Windows. I also love the men's hairstyles that usually are in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Like that. But those charts are great.
Another scandal.
Fatty Arbuckle, the great silent screen comic, was involved in a hotel room scandal where a woman was found dead, and he was acquitted, but his career was ruined. Again, a linoleum drawing.
This is amazing.
This is a small detail of a painting I had done that was inspired by the pages of the New York the Village Voice here, where you can go shopping for the woman you would like to have a massage with. And the problem I had with this was coming up with a different name of the girl here. And trying not to repeat the telephone numbers.
Doing this sort of work, it takes a lot of time, and I imagine it either makes you more inclined to have sex as you're doing it, or is it like a substitute for sex? Do you do this instead of having sex?
No, it just tired me out. I couldn't do anything.
Have a cigarette afterwards.
Salome. Here, I did a series of drawings on femme fatales.
Yeah, beheadings and everything else. And speaking of having a cigarette afterwards.
Yeah, this is the cover of another little magazine that we had done called the Pushpin Graphic, where we all contributed work. The format was 32 pages. Here, it started out as sort of a modest broadside, and then for about the last 10 years, making it into a normal format magazine where we were able to show the kind of illustration work we wanted to get. Again, each one was on a different theme. I think this was couples, I believe. And I happened to have done this particular cover. This was done for a film series. I think for college campuses. I think they were all erotic films that they were showing. This happens to be a version. I had a print made of it, but the poster had type.
It's lovely.
Yeah, sort of. New York used to have burlesque houses like that, where in sort of musty, dusty rooms where the girls performed and the guys were sitting around looking very bored.
Yeah. And now we just have computers for that, too.
Yeah, that's gone. That's a shame. Yeah, it's a shame. This also was... This was done for the New York Times book review again for Steve Heller.
Anything
Here.
to be sexy. Then now here we get right down to the point of things.
Yeah, I found this chart in an antique store in New Jersey here, and I sort of made it work with a topographical map.
Yeah, so everything's got fantastic names. The Sea of Passion and and the penis.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't think we used a word like that. It's disgusting.
And this is one of my favorite things too.
This was idea came to me while I was waiting for Paula. She and her partners were having their annual meeting in Jamaica and on the beach, and I was sort of hanging around the beach here, and I was trying to come up with an idea. I wanted to say drawings by Seymour Chwast, but I thought I was being clever, but the publisher wanted to exploit my name, so we had to leave it as. So there were 64 pages of puns like this. It goes on and on. And that's it.
Seymour, you've given us an incredible boost. Thank you.
Yeah.